Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the Corporate Facility Council's webinar, Lessons from the Front Lines in the War Against Coronavirus, presented by Wayne Witzel. I do want to let everyone know that they have been muted for audio quality. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free and type them into the question box, and we'll go over them during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. The recording will be available on the CFC's website, which is ifmacfc.org. You can also access past CFC webinars there as well. Again, their website is ifmacfc.org. Okay, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce our presenter today, Wayne Witzel, who's been an active IFMA member since 2000. He's IFMA's 2018 International Distinguished Member of the Year. In 2015, he was selected as IFMA's Associate of the Year at World Workplace in Denver, and was selected as IFMA's Distinguished Author of the Year in 2016. He's the current Programs Chair for the IFMA Corporate Facilities Council and past President of the East Bay Chapter. Over the years, he's held various positions such as Sustainability Committee Chair, Website Chair, Sacramento Valley Chapter Vice President, and he's been to 13 World Workplace Conferences and has presented at several IFMA Chapter and Council events in Facility Fusion. He supports the IFMA Foundation initiatives by routinely speaking at local schools and colleges about careers in FM. Wayne holds credentials as a lead AP, business energy professional, and certified green business operator. At this time, I'm happy to turn it over to Wayne. Wayne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joshua. I appreciate that. So everyone, I just want to at the outset just thank my council, the Corporate Facilities Council. We are the place to go to for anything O&M, and now is the time when we need some important information. So if you're not familiar with the CFC, take a look on the site. I think it's still $55 to join that council and get access to all that wonderful information and contacts there. So I just encourage you to take a look at that. I will say that apologize at the outset here that I am running on very little sleep at this point in time. It's been very crazy with everything that's going out there, so I just want to say that up front here. So I apologize if I'm not my usual gregarious, bubbly self here on this, but just wanted to say that on the outset. My goal here for everybody is I want to make you very informed so you can navigate through all this misinformation and information that's floating around. My goal is that vendors will not be able to take advantage of you after this. That's my number one goal. I want you to be deadly. I want you, when people come to you with solutions and propose solutions, that you'll be able to see through some of that misinformation and get to what you need. Joshua mentioned that the questions can be asked. I want to reiterate that those questions can be asked anonymously. If you ask it by typing in the chat window, we don't know who you are. Don't say who you are, because one of the reasons I put this webinar together is a lot of the FMs I've talked to, in fact, all the FMs I've talked to have said they're not allowed to publicly discuss their coronavirus response. So it's really falling on us in the SME community to talk about some of these things that we can and bring it to light for the FMs, since they can't actually publicly talk about it. And I understand why. That makes a lot of sense, and you'll see why that makes a lot of sense as we go on into this. So part of the reason why you'll see, or one of the answers you'll get back from the FMs is, look, just follow the CDC centers that's what they can say. Follow the CDC center guidance, and that's what I'm hearing from FMs. But those of us in the industry have some problems with the CDC guidance. It's either weak or contradictory in areas, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But it's kind of contributing a little bit to the confusion and some of the syntax and the way the words are being used. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. But I want to help you sort through all of this with accurate information and real world experience. So March has been very interesting for us. Literally, since the beginning of March, we have disinfected hundreds of facilities in every business sector. We're talking corporate offices, campus, law firms, retail banking, because retail banking is an essential business. They're still up and running. So we've done emergency responder facilities. Now, what I cannot talk about today, I can't give you any specific client by name or show any photos of the facilities, though I did get one special client to allow us to show photos and talk about their situation. So we do have something to show there, but this is all very, you've got to keep a lot of this stuff under the lid for numerous reasons, as you all know, being FMs. But I'm going to peel back what I can without being super specific about all of that. So China. So this is the current situation we're in started back when this really started to hit China. And one of the problems is China really, like a vacuum, just sucked up a lot of the necessary products and equipment that the world needs to do this. And a lot of the manufacturers were obviously happy to send product and equipment over there to service that. But the problem as a result of that is it put us in particular and everyone else behind the eight ball, because all of these supplies were cleaned out for the most part, and manufacturers were still, ramping up, gearing up to produce more product and restock and back ordering everything. So we started out as a nation, before this thing hit our shores, behind the eight ball. When it first hit China, some organizations asked their, existing janitorial contractor to respond with either additional cleaning or, quote, disinfection. We have observed in our, interaction with FMs and on sites, a variety of responses from janitorial contractors that range anywhere from good and all the way, quite frankly, to harmful. So we're going to discuss this again in more detail later. What I saw from some of my FMs and some of their companies is some responded with prevention efforts very early on, well before the shelter in place and restrictions were given, and others only reacted when there was a problem or when an employee reported in sick, and then they reacted that way. So I've seen a lot of different response, and some of that response was dictated not necessarily by policy, but dictated by the availability of these resources, which we were understocked with going into this pandemic, or at least when it hit our shores. Well, then a shift happened, and that shift was the shelter-in-place orders and the work-from-home restrictions, and this has caused some interesting ripple effects by enforcing this. So as a result of this, many companies are either not providing janitorial services at this time due to that non-essential restriction, non-essential business restriction, or there's a very small janitorial crew at reduced hours servicing the facilities where they're allowed to. So we've got this labor kind of shrink that's going on right now, in addition to lack of equipment, lack of PPE, and PPE is personal protective equipment, so I'll be saying PPE from now on, and lack of disinfectant, the core of all this. So now we've got this labor issue. And the coming issue, and this is the core of what I'm going to talk about today here, the coming issue is the return of your workforce to these facilities when the shelter in place and the work from home restrictions are lifted. And companies, we're seeing, just like unfortunately, like the virus is replicating and duplicating every day, we're getting requests from people. It's exponential because the shelter in place is creating a compressed time period to get disinfections done. So they want to disinfect their facilities before the workforce returns to them. Now, we don't know if or when the restrictions are going to be lifted anytime soon. They could be extended. We don't know. And I know you, FMs, just like us, we're waiting to see what happens. But the result of this is this huge backlog of disinfection work. And now you've got this backlog, and you've got limited labor, limited disinfectant, limited equipment, and all to be performed in that compressed period of time. We call that a perfect storm. And this is the situation that we're in now. So some companies will deal with this storm and this particular set of problems by skipping disinfection, or what I see more commonly is kind of looking the other way when only the available products to disinfect are being used. The ones that aren't either EPA registered or hospital grade, or are what we would call unsafe to humans, animals, and aquatic life. So we see a lot of that happening where it's like, okay, well, I got to do something. Just bring some kind of disinfectant in and do something. I see a lot of that going on. So I want to put rigor around all that for you and give you some structure. So let's talk about the disinfectant. This is the core problem here. You know, the CDC recommends that you use EPA registered disinfectants, and there's a reason why. They are tested, and those disinfectants, especially hospital grade disinfectants, are going to have proven efficacy for you in your facilities. The problem is these are in very short supply right now, and most websites you go to will say sold out. Now, I receive calls daily from companies asking me if we have supply to sell them. Janitorial companies, organizations, client companies, everybody. And most places have been sold out since the end of February. And the first round of back orders they were issuing then were also already sold out. So now we're talking about second round back orders that people are waiting for. And you know, there's different projections for different manufacturers, but we're looking well into late April and beyond for those disinfectants to get here in some cases. So you see what that initial flood in China did and how it caused that ripple effect that we're trying to catch up to. So the result of this is I've seen everything from, you know, bleach to more commonly, you know, off-the-shelf cleaners and disinfectants being used by cleaning contractors. And this is all due to the shortage. And what's even worse, and this really drives me crazy here, I also see companies stretching their existing supply to make it last. It's kind of like watering down your soup. But the disinfectants are tested to work at a certain dilution ratio or to be used straight, ready to use. If you're diluting that and stretching it, you don't have the documented efficacy. You're just essentially going through the notion of disinfectant and not actually using it according to the labeling. So that's a critical thing. You're stretching your disinfectant, you might as well not be doing it at all. Somebody's just charging you money to spray watered down disinfectant, which you can't guarantee is going to have efficacy. So I see a lot of that also. There are companies who either, you know, there are companies who saw this coming down the road. Those of us that perform, you know, sanitization services routinely, that this is part of our bailiwick from the start. A lot of us in that side of the fence, we saw this coming and we got well stocked in advance of this and even ordered on the back orders because we knew what this meant, because we had that subject matter expertise. Those companies that have a good stock, that have existing equipment and so forth, are going to be in a much better position to properly and safely, you know, sanitize your facilities without having to water down their disinfectant or pull some Home Depot disinfectant or deodorizer off the shelf. So just letting you know kind of what's going on behind the scenes with a lot of our companies. And a quick story. We were at one of the supply houses buying some other stuff here unrelated to disinfectant, and we're there, and there's a frenzy in there. There's a lot of cleaning contractors, janitorial folks, and they're all, you know, pulling, you know, trying to pull disinfectant or anything that will disinfect off the shelves. There was nothing left. And then one of the guys pulled these chlorine tabs off the shelf and said, this will disinfect, right? And of course, the person behind the counter, oh, sure, it'll disinfect. And yes, chlorine will disinfect, but the dangers of taking that chlorine tab and dissolving it, putting it into some kind of a device like a fogger, or even just spraying that in the facility, has huge downside and implication. And that's where we are. People are just have either never done this before, or they're scraping the bottom of the barrel and using products that have no business in your facilities right now. So these are the things you need to know about disinfectants. Not all disinfectants are created equal. You need to know which product is being used in your facilities. You just can't say to your cleaning contractor, will you disinfect? You need to know what is the product, and you need the SDS. The question you need to ask, is it an EPA registered hospital grade disinfectant? Now, if they tell you no, and we can't get them, that's an honest answer. So you can work together to maybe try to find that, or find a contractor that has that. But that's a core question, because if you just want to go through the notion of disinfecting and spray Febreze on it, that's going to give you the same effect. So ask that question. Does the staff who's applying this need PPE? The SDS will tell you that. that has a ripple effect. So let's say that disinfectant requires full PPE, goggle, mask, gloves, etc. Does your contractor have those items? Because a lot of contractors don't, because we're out of those items and we're redirecting and deploying those to the medical facilities and first responders. So there's a shortage there too. So the safer disinfectants are the ones that are going to save you on those PPE costs. Have you seen the sample kill list for the product? Every reputable disinfectant is going to have a sample kill list that they tested this product on. And you will see on some of those kill lists, it will say feline corona, canine corona, other previous strains of corona. You'll see that on there to give you confidence that what is being used will actually work. So you want to definitely check on the proof, especially of other corona strains. So let me back up here. So I want to be diplomatic in the way I say this here. So I just want to tell you, as FMs, you can't blindly trust that your janitorial contractor will adhere to these guidelines. Or even if they want to, or usually do, they might not have a chance to adhere to these given the shortages. So you need to just have a conversation with whoever's doing your disinfection about this. And you can't just trust. You've got to know what's being used and what the efficacy is of it, and work together to try to find a solution if you can't get this. Now, let's say you can't get, I mean, the ideal for us, there's many disinfectants that are effective. Let's put it that way. There are many disinfectants that are effective, but at what cost to your employees' health and indoor air quality? That's the big difference. So for us, we recommend, if you can find one that the SDS is a 000, that's where you look on the, the health, flammability, reactivity, PPE section. If you can get one that's an SDS of 000 and one that's a no rinse food safe certified through NSF, that's your ideal. That's your holy grail. That's the one that you want. That's the only one that we routinely stock ourselves at my company. So we don't, I mean, we're all over the nation, all over the U.S., but we're headquartered in California. So our restrictions have always been a little bit tighter than the rest of the country. So this is the only disinfectant that we usually use. Hopefully we won't have to switch to something else given the shortages. But this is what you want to aim for. This is your target. These are the optimal choice. If you can't get one of these, be cautious, read the SDS, and examine it before applying it in your facility. And this is regardless of what the CDC says is acceptable, okay? I'm kind of giving you the real straight answer here. Go for SDS 000 food safe if that does not require PPE to apply. If you can't get that, find the next most safest thing that is available on the market right now and work with your provider to make sure their people are safe when they're applying it. If it says PPE on the SDS, ask your provider, will you be providing PPE to your staff as they put this stuff down? What are the implications to my staff after it goes down? Will it create IAQ issues for me? Will it have a residual odor? Can I smell it before you apply it? So get all of that up front. The other big piece here, this is kind of interesting, this cropped up for us, is, in researching all these disinfectants, we could not find a single disinfectant other than these SDS food safe ones that are actually safe and allowed to be used on non-porous surfaces. So you'll see when you read the labeling on a lot of disinfectants, it says for use only on non-porous surfaces. So, countertop, stainless steel, anything hard, right? But what about your fabrics? What about your upholstery? What about your carpeting? How are those going to be? So what's happening is people are spraying these things in foggers and everywhere else on everything in your facility now anyway, and the labeling says you're not even supposed to do that. Now, what's the implication of that? Well, number one, it hasn't been tested for efficacy on porous items like fabrics. So that's important. And secondly, is many of them contain bleach and bleaching compounds, which could damage your fabric, either discolor it, yellow spots on it, or could just damage the integrity of the fabric. And you all know how much some of these pieces cost that are in your facilities. It's ridiculous that could be damaged with this. So look also on you won't find this necessarily always on the SDS. You'll find it on the labeling on the disinfectants. So that's another thing, is to ask for the label and see if it's safe for porous surfaces as well as non-porous. If you cannot get one that is, you need to weigh that risk, maybe do a test chair with it and see what you think, see if it damages it. But I would be very cautious about that. Now, the CDC literally recommends bleach as an alternative, as a disinfectant. And this is for corporate facilities. When you go through their website and go to that tab, bleach is listed as an alternative. Actually, I shouldn't even say it's an alternative. It's listed as the first thing. There is an EPA registered list on that site, but bleach comes up in the body of the text of the web page. Bleach is very, very dangerous. It has no place in today's facilities for this kind of maintenance because it leaves behind a lot of nasty compounds. I mean, number one, you're leaving things like haloacetic acids, trihalomethanes, things that are going to linger and affect your IAQ. But the thing that always scares me about bleach, and whenever I see bleach in your facilities, my clients, in a closet, I take a picture of it and send it to you. The same way if I ever see somebody with a personal heater plugged into 4 surge strips daisy chained underneath their desk, I take a picture of that and send it to you. I consider both of them to be the same version of lethal. And here's why. I mean, many of you might have even heard about this thing that happened at the Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant. If someone had mopped earlier in the day with an acidic cleaner, which is very common to do for tile and grout. So if you had this kind of a tiled kitchen and somebody's mopping with that, well, then somebody came along later and mopped with bleach. And you know what that made? Chlorine gas. And it killed a person, and another person was in critical condition. So, bleach will dry into a dry particle, but if that dry particle ever comes back in contact with an incompatible cleaning agent, you could create toxic fumes. So I don't like bleach, and I think the CDC should have offered some additional guidelines around that. So no bleach. Now, so we talked about disinfectant, talk about product. Now, once you know the product, your next question is to ask, how will this be applied? And once again, we're dealing with a problem. So when it comes to the equipment, the availability of the equipment is a huge issue right now. But assuming that there is equipment available, the question is, does your contractor know how to use it? So what is the dilution ratio of the disinfectant? Are they applying it at the proper dilution for what the intended reason is? What's the required dwell time to kill? Now, if you watch some, because we're in facilities all over the United States, and when we watch some of these contractors that we've seen do some of this work, we see them spray and wipe. And all of these disinfectants have some kind of a dwell time, and usually on the sample kill list, it will tell you what the required dwell time is for that particular pathogen. So most of them, I mean, some of them are 30-second kill, but most of them want you to have a 10-minute dwell. That means 10 minutes where the area has to be damp with the product, with the proper coverage and application rate to kill what's on there, the pathogen you're trying to kill. So 10 minutes for most of them is what you're going to see. Some are more, some of the more gnarly, nasty ones could go a little faster than that, but at the cost of being gnarly and nasty. So your contractor, do they know what the dwell time is? These are, you can see I'm arming you with the questions you need to be asking before you just, turn it over to your contractor. Is there a defined scope of what will be disinfected? Do you know? Have they given you a list of the touch points that they use, and you look at that and say, this is great, but can you add A, B, and C to it as well? So get that defined scope of exactly what they're going to be doing and how they're going to be doing it. We talked about the fabrics and the porous items. Ask that question again. And is the product corrosive to electronics? So I'll mention this now. I was going to mention it later, but in the application, most of the good disinfectants are going to be non-corrosives, but they are going to have a rule about spray time. So a good gauge, this is just kind of, what we've accumulated, in our knowledge bases. You don't want to aim at any, with fogging devices or whatever, aim at any electronics for more than 4 seconds. So that's important. And then any other surface, really 30 seconds of coverage is the max you ever want to do on any of these other surfaces. Partially because you could over wet things, but also because it's a waste of product. So that 4 and 30, 4 for electronics, 30 for everything else is the max on all of those. So keep that in mind. But yes, you can spray on computer keyboards, mice, and so forth. Where you won't spray is in data center for obvious reasons. How soon can your occupants return after treatment? Ask that question. If you get a deer in the headlights look back, that's worrisome. Then I think you need to take some control there, and you did make that determination after talking to the manufacturer of the disinfectant, perhaps, or reviewing the SDS with your EH&S people. But those SDS 000 food safe ones, you can come in immediately because they don't require PPE to apply. We usually recommend on those that if there's been any kind of fogging, say, look, if you can just give it, an hour or two to settle and give it that much time, that'll be fine. So we normally most people are gone for the day anyway when we apply this during this period of work from home anyway, so occupants isn't that big of a deal. But if you're talking about applying this later when people are back to work, you need to understand, based on that disinfectant and working with your contractor, when can you safely have your people return? So let's talk about some of the different ways that this is applied. So the manual application is still very valid, and it's more and more than ever because such a shortage of equipment exists right now. But with this kind of equipment, a spray bottle, you can do a lot. The question is, are you spraying and wiping, or are you spraying and letting it dwell? And if so, if you're letting it dwell, are you letting it dwell and dry, or are you letting it dwell and then wiping it off? I would recommend in this particular issue, as much as possible, to give it dwell time. And if it's something that is not going to leave a residue or make the surface look too dirty with water droplets on it, I would just let it dry on the surface. That's going to give you the maximum contact with any organic material or biofilm that's holding the virus, and let that dry and kill it on there. But again, it's up to you for cosmetic reasons if you want to go and wipe things down after to get rid of any residue or droplets. But regardless, this isn't about spraying the front door handle on your front entrance of your lobby and spray and then wipe it with a towel. You're not doing anything. It's got to spray, dwell, and keep it wet for the period of time it's required to kill that pathogen. Then if you want to wipe, you can. Now, I will say about wiping, there are actual rules for how you're supposed to use a towel. And I really, just to make this easy, if you have an active COVID case, a documented positive test of one of your people, and you're remediating that, we're going to talk about that too. I'm going to have a separate section on that for you shortly. But if that's the case, you're going to take your towel, your people, and they need to use proper towel technique, which is to fold that towel into four ways, so that they only every time they spray and do a wipe, they then flip that towel side over and use a fresh side when they're wiping, because they can cross-contaminate if they don't. You rarely see this happen, except for people that are subject matter experts or people in the restoration industry. We all understand and routinely practice that method anyway when dealing with microbials from sewage backups and mold and things like that. So the towel folding is important to do. And I would say the good delineation right now, do it if there's an active COVID case. If there's not, you don't really have to. And it'd be very difficult to police it anyway with your folks for just a regular preventive disinfection. So just mentioning that also. So where you're going to do this, you're going to do high use touch points like your door handles, drawer pulls, stair rails, elevator call buttons, reception desks. Anywhere there's a high touch that you want frequent touch on this, that somebody can go around with this product in a very contained, small way. Even during occupancy, somebody could use this product. That's what you want. You want to find something that when people are back to work and you want somebody to go and touch up that front door handle several times a day, this is the tool they're probably going to use to do that, and that's perfectly fine. So we love the spray bottle. Now, as far as electronic equipment or powered equipment, I should say, there's really two types you need to be aware of. And maybe let me just say this first is, if your janitors or vendors don't already have powered equipment at this point in time going into the pandemic, or if they didn't purchase it early, they probably won't have it anytime soon. Just point blank. A small, tiny electrostatic sprayer that normally sells for $750 on March 10th was already up to $2,000. And just 3 days ago, my guys informed me that they're now $20,000. That's originally $750, now going for $20,000. China reduced the available supply of this all before this appeared on our shore, so that set us back. And now there's just a huge demand for this equipment. Now, it's interesting. I received a letter from a CEO of a maintenance company, and it was, a lovely letter saying, hey, we're here for everybody. We want to help and so forth. And we're trying to source equipment to be able to help with this. And I looked at it like, good luck. Nobody can get equipment now. So their manufacturers, obviously, they want to sell equipment during this crisis, so they're ramping up production, but everything is already on back order, and those first rounds have already been purchased by people. So if you can't get equipment, your only alternative is to go back to manual application. So be aware that you might have an army of people with these as opposed to a few people with these. So let's talk about the different types of powered equipment. So these are foggers, and we love foggers. And foggers take your product at whatever diluted ratio you're using, if it is a diluted ratio, and it creates an adjustable level of mist that emanates from the tips of these devices and can be aimed. And you can get about a 12 to 15 foot throw with these. Foggers tend to use a little bit more product, so that some people like going to the next thing I'm going to show you. But foggers are the staple, and they're great, and they were reasonably priced. So those of us in the industry that use foggers, typically are well stocked with those right now to be able to do this work. But again, foggers perfectly fine. The only disadvantage, maybe I would say, is they tend to put out a little bit more volume, so you're using more product. So there's probably a little more cost to your contractors in that case. The next are electrostatic sprayers, and we love these too. And the technology with electrostatic sprayers is a little different. Number one is it doesn't use as much product, and they also have a lot of these have been converted to things like backpacks and so forth, unlike the foggers. Some foggers you can get on rollers and wheels, but with the backpacks, it's very convenient. Production rates are great. But how it works is it literally creates a charge on the mist, on the particles that emanate from the tip. And the way I want you to imagine it is, imagine you have a pipe, and you're spraying at the side of that pipe. With electrostatic spraying, the particles will find their way around the exterior of the pipe and find their way to the interior of the pipe because of the charge. They're looking to it's a polarity issue, so they're looking to find that other charge and bond. So both fogging and electrostatic spraying are fine. Sometimes we use both. Sometimes you use one or the other. In this crisis, it's usually whatever's available for that particular job is what's going to go out right now, because the demand is so high. But keep in mind, those are your three primary ways of applying the disinfectant for the type of pandemic we're talking about right now. So I recommend doing a combination of these, of manual application along with some sort of fogging or spraying. So I don't recommend just doing fogging. I think that some very focused application with the spray bottle is warranted. So let's talk about this whole deep cleaning thing. Several times a day, I get calls or emails from people saying, "Do you do deep cleaning?" And my question is, well, what do you mean by deep cleaning? And I don't know where this term's coming from. I don't think it's on the CDC site. I don't know who's perpetuating the term deep cleaning. And I'm saying deep cleaning as opposed to what? Shallow cleaning. I don't understand. Deep cleaning is not disinfecting. I can clean something and it's not disinfected. And I can disinfect something and it might not look clean. But the most important thing right now is disinfecting. So look at it this way. If someone is telling you that they can come in and do deep cleaning for you, that may be a tell, like in poker. That may be a tell that you're talking to someone that maybe doesn't have a good grasp or subject matter expertise around this issue. So bear that in mind. Just cleaning more. In other words, can you come in and sanitize, or can you come in and deep clean my carpets? So, okay, I'll clean it twice. Did I have any disinfecting property? Yeah, I probably maybe flushed a lot of stuff out of it, but it's not disinfected. Did I add any kind of sanitization step to it? Did I give it the dwell time, or did I just run a carpet wand over it? Did I sanitize deep clean your door handle, or did I sanitize it? Did I wipe it down with Windex, or did I use a disinfectant? So bear that in mind. Now, the little brother of this concept is deodorization is not disinfecting. The safer disinfectants have little to no odor, and they're almost undetectable within a few hours after you apply them. The others, the not so good ones, come with a more medicinal or a chemical-ish smell. We don't recommend deodorizer, but we have been asked to use it during this crisis. And I'll give you the background here. We had a client that had some people that were going to be returning to work, and this is before the shelter in place, on a Monday, and said, look, it's been disinfected, and that's great, but how will they know that it's been disinfected? I said, well, you tell them. And he said, well, it doesn't smell like anything. And I said, well, that's a good thing. He said, well, we need to let them know, and there has to be some kind of a perceived something there when they walk in the building. So we went through and added a deodorizer, a light deodorization smell. And the people who normally would complain about odors, I can't stand any kind of odors myself. I'm very sensitive to those things, to perfumes, and to like when stripper is being used to remove floor finish from VCT, that lingering stripper smell in facilities. I'm hypersensitive to that stuff. I can smell it for weeks. But in this case, the employees appreciated it because it solidified in their minds that something was done over the weekend and they're safe. But again, I don't recommend it. If for some reason you have to do that, you again, look at the SDS, find something that's not going to be problematic for you IAQ wise, but if you can at all avoid the deodorization component to this, do so. So who's doing this kind of work? Well, it's really three areas: your janitorial contractors, restoration companies, and specialty SME companies like us. You want to ask, who are these people? They're going to fall into three categories here. Are they learning on the fly with this whole thing? And that's, you know what, it's fine. If they are learning on the fly, that's fine. But they should be honest with you and saying, hey, we're navigating our way through this just like you are. Here's the challenges we're facing, because you guys might be able to help each other out as FM and service provider. So find that out, dig a little bit, ask some questions. Are they fly-by-night operators? Because believe me, there are a lot of those out there right now. People that just purchased some equipment or product or something off the shelf, and now they're doing disinfectant services, especially if they're owner-operators because they don't have employees, and therefore they're not furloughed employees. Or lastly, are they experienced subject matter experts? So I just want to show you something here. This was a YouTube video that has been going around in the past week. This is from the Tenacity Academy YouTube channel. And this young lady is a very determined entrepreneurial person, but she's had never done disinfecting and sanitization before. I think she does residential house cleaning. And she decided she was going to do this. So she's filming herself, telling her, what she did, and just went to Home Depot and got some stuff, and she's going to be rolling in money now doing disinfectant work. These are her graphics that I pulled up here. And she shows what she got. She went to Home Depot and bought a Ryobi half-gallon small fogger and Odoban. Now, Odoban is a disinfectant, quote disinfectant, with air freshener or with deodorizer. And by the way, just to give you an indication, this is sold out at most Home Depots also right now. It shows you how much of this stuff flooded onto the market. And it's not just, people's residentially buying this. These are commercial people grabbing this stuff off the shelf and spraying it in your facilities. And she ends her video by showing herself applying this to the tune of Push It by OT Genesis. Lyrics go get that money, go get that money. So I applaud her go-getter attitude and that tenacity, like her website says, but does she know what she's doing? Is this an active COVID case? Because if it is, she needs to be treating this very differently than what she is. Is this preventive? Has she given a scope to the client? Does she know exactly what touch points to use? What has she told the client she's using Odoban, which does not have an SDS of 000? So this is what you need to be careful of and watch out for. So the other problem here with people is now you've got layoffs, furloughs, and reduced staff. So think about this. You've got, you know, the shelter in place and work from home orders. You all have basically said to a lot of your janitorial companies, hey guys, we don't have anybody here, so we don't need you. So don't come in and do service or operate on a small staff. So we've already lost a lot of people, labor force that could do this work. And what I'm even hearing from some of my partners in this industry, they're saying, look, I can give these guys reduced hours. They can come in for 8 or 16 hours a week, but most of them are saying no, because number one, it might cost them more than that to get to and from work, you know, for such small hours. And two, they won't collect their benefits if they do that, if they actually are still employed. So some of them, or a lot of them, are choosing just to stay at home when I ask if they want to come in and do this anyway. So keep that in mind, that now we have this labor issue that even if you want to get this done, a lot of these people have been furloughed or laid off and might not be available to come in, or might not want to come in, because there is still a logical, fearful component for a janitorial team to say, hey, I'm nervous about coming in. I'm nervous about leaving my house. I don't want to travel on public transit to get to this job that pays me, you know, minimum wage, to risk my life with no PPE, spraying God knows what. So keep that in mind too. The labor issue is a part of this as well. So I want to talk about the common approaches here. Let me just back up for a second. I want to hammer this home. The people that are left, are they trained? The people that you're allowing into your facilities right now, do they know like what the coverage rate of the disinfectant is to ensure that it's the efficacy? Or literally, are they just charging you to spray some unknown product willy-nilly in your facilities? You need to dig. You need to find that information out. So these two approaches, these are two most common approaches you're going to run into. One is going to be a prevention and precaution approach, and the other is going to be when, you know, the proverbial stuff hits the fan here. This is when you've got an employee that tests positive and they were in your facility yesterday. Okay, you got these two. So let's talk about prevention and precaution. So I'm going to tell you a story. So I had a client that they were still operating. They're in a place that still allowed, that at that point in time allowed operation. And they brought in a batch of new employees for employee orientation. Those group of employees came into the front door, got in the elevator, went up to the 8th floor, and entered a training room. And they were there for 3 days. And my friend, who's an FM, she checked in and said, how are things going at the building? And, oh, great, no, business as usual. We got these people that came in for training. And she said, did you give them the screening process? And they said, the what? You know, the screening process. You need to ask them this series of questions, such as, do you have coronavirus? Do you know anybody that tested positive for it? Anyone that you live with, et cetera? The series of screening questions. No, we forgot. They went up to the room, they asked everybody, and one guy raised his hand. Yes, my grandfather has tested positive and I live with him. Immediately, they evacuated all of them out the back stairwell from the 8th floor down and called us. So in that case, we had to do path of travel from the front door to all the elevators that could have been used. We don't know which one that they used. That entire floor where the training was on, and a partial of the other floor below where they had some event as part of this there as well, and the entire stairwell from top to bottom and rear and emergency exit door, and had to do all. And by the way, this was a call center, so this also involved them shipping hundreds or driving hundreds of laptops up to these folks to get them set up. So that's the kind of situation we're seeing, is a lot of things like that. I recommend that multi-layered approach. So that means you're doing the spray bottle direct touch point spray concentrated there, followed up by some kind of powered spraying, fogging, or electrostatic. So what are the items to disinfect? All those high touch points. And what I like to tell people is that 2 foot to 6 foot high range is your target. We're talking about desk areas, desktops, keyboards, mice, cabinets, cabinet doors, drawer pulls. We're talking about conference room tables, the armrests on the chairs themselves, if you have one that can be applied to porous surfaces. Any high touch point you need to touch. The other thing is I would prefer it if we could have the drawers open in your facility. In other words, everybody's little pedestal or their desk drawers, if they could be open, because you don't know if someone reached into there and touched something. Now, I'd probably say more often than not, we don't get that with facility managers, but that's something that you want to consider, especially if you have a hot spot or someone was sick. Having those drawers open during the fogging process is going to be helpful. Paper, so we already talked about the electronics. Paper, if there's paper on the desk, the paper could curl slightly. You could get a little fading on ink from fogging. So any important papers that you can't have anything done to or any damage at all, make sure those are put away. If you do spray over them, it's not going to really super harm them. They'll still be fine and usable. They'll just be disinfected with a slight curl to the page. So, but I do recommend getting rid of any important papers first and storing those. Kitchens. Here's the other thing. If you have somebody in micro kitchens where there's food, if there's open foodstuffs, fruit sitting out, if there's open chip bags, things like that, you want all those put away behind sealed cabinets or sealed refrigerator during the spraying. If you're using a no rinse food safe disinfectant, you have a lot less worry. What that means is you could spray a cutting board in the kitchen with it, and then when it dries, you cut a tomato on it and eat it without rinsing. And so that's the disinfectant that we stock is an NSF no rinse. And that's the one you want to look for if you can get it. If you can't, then you really have to be careful. The other thing too is if they're spraying in your kitchen and you guys store plates and forks and things like that, you need to be careful, because if they're fogging, it's going to get on those items. And if it's not a no rinse food safe, you then potentially put some product on an eating utensil that's going to go into someone's mouth. So they either need to be covered during the process, and saran wrap is fine, or they need to be removed from the area and put in a sealed area. When I say sealed, even a lot of the cabinets you guys have, there's a gap in the cabinet, and if you're doing electrostatic spraying, it's going to find its way into that gap and onto the plates. So it's a good thing if you have, those of you that have small kitchenettes maybe in your facility with plates, to have those washed. Would be a good secondary step by your janitorial. Areas to disinfect, make sure all the doors are open on your conference rooms for us, and your private offices are open so we can get in and fog those areas. And the way we do that, by the way, is we usually start at the top and rear of a facility and work our way backward. So someone's pre-spraying all those high touch points with the manual sprayer, and then you've got the folks operating the equipment, the foggers or the electrostatic sprayers, starting in the rear and working their way out to the entrance and cleaning or disinfecting their way backward out of the facility. The facility has to be unoccupied. So you need to make sure that that's, work with security, make sure that no one's going in there during this process. And again, find out when your people can come back in based on what the SDS says. What's the frequency? Before the work from home restriction came in, we were doing some places conference rooms every night for some clients. We were coming there every single night and disinfecting. Are you going to do this once and set a baseline, or are you going to put this on some kind of a planned frequency? And then what's the impact here with HR? Listen, employees feel safe and they know it's disinfected when they're returning to work. That's the main thing. Keep that in mind. So I want to talk about one area where I could show you pictures here. So I'm very proud of my company. My CEO said, look, we got to help the community in addition to, our clients. So our company is actually servicing dozens of fire departments and police stations and fire people housing in the Peninsula Bay Area. So we go there and routinely sanitize their trucks and their facilities. And it's I didn't really realize how scary this all was, that how important this is, and how this could take out a whole group of people until I talked to the chief and understood that. But you see what the guys are doing here in these photos is they're doing direct application of all these high touch points with their manual spray bottles, and then that's followed up with the fogging that goes behind that. You see the guys operating the foggers there. And this really hit me when I saw this picture online. I just happened to see this on an article. Look at all the people touching those vehicles, the medical staff. I mean, we're sending these first responders into crazy places, and God knows what's being touched on their vehicle. So when I saw this, I realized, oh, this is really scary. Disinfection is so important, especially for these guys. And then we go into the facilities. Here's an example of doing direct touch spray on a desk, and then followed up by doing the entire area with the fogging. Now, what if you have an active COVID case? Well, to avoid spreading the virus beyond the affected area, well, disinfecting is the #1 thing. You don't want to make this problem worse. And the CDC guidelines are very weak and contradictory. They tell you just wait 24 hours and throw on a gown and go in and you'll be fine. This needs to be almost treated almost as bad as it's mold. Now, it's funny, mold, we lose our minds over mold and do crazy things for it. And it's really, the inside skin is not as bad as people make it out to be. It's only really bad for a segment of the population, kind of like coronavirus. But what you want to do is contain it. So that means that the people, as they work their way out, they need to either sanitize their PPE and equipment before it leaves the facility or the affected area, or they need to remove those items, PPE, and seal them and seal everything up in clean bags before they take it out, because they could be taking the virus out of the affected area. And we need to protect our people like it's mold at the very least. So no, not just a gown and a surgical mask. They need to actually be protected. So if it is an active case, Fred was here yesterday. He called in and said, I got a positive test. You guys are going to have to really ramp up for that. After all, this is what we do in hospitals. And if we're going to do it in hospitals, why aren't we doing it when we're remediating it in the person's desk? So here's your disinfection strategies. You either disinfect now during the work from home shelter-in-place restrictions, okay? Disinfect it now when there's nobody there, or do nothing. Here's another option. Assume the contamination will naturally die off before the work from home is lifted. Hey, we're going to be here for another 3 weeks. That stuff won't live. Well, we're now finding out that the cruise ship has documented that it's lasted 17 days on some surfaces. We were operating from a 4 to 8 day period, but now we're hearing 17 possible. It's a little scary. Or you just wait for the staff to self-report an illness or test positively, then you take some action. These are really your 3 strategies that you have an option for. But here's your pricing problem. It's Wild West. This is literally the range I'm seeing, 5 cents to $5. It's crazy. The stuff on the higher end is usually when you're talking about positive COVID cases or there's an emergency response. It could also be higher costs because people are doing all manual cleaning. But mostly it's going to be, there's a lot of price gouging going on there. And on the other side, it can be cheaper if you schedule it in a precautionary way. If you're using equipment like sprayers and foggers, you get more production. Campuses and larger facilities are going to come in at a lower unit cost as well. But they could also be using lesser quality products. Okay, they could also be saying, hey, look, I just want to give my people some work to keep the doors open to my janitorial company. We'll only charge you a nickel. You could get some of that as well. But what I found is there's a sweet spot. This is really where you want to be. You want to be. This is really, you're going to get good service in this area with good subject matter experts in this kind of range with the sweet spot. But you can dictate that too by saying, I'm going to do precautionary instead of reactionary. The difference is precautionary is going to cost you cents per foot. Remediation of an active case is going to cost you dollars per foot. So here's my recommendations. Here's your best strategy. Disinfect now during the work from home and set a baseline of sanitization. Then aggressively enforce your policies of self-reporting and not coming to work when sick. I mean, it has to be aggressive. So you've already set that baseline. Then you need to do screening for any non-regular employees who don't get your, who don't understand your policies or don't have a responsibility to you for those. Or new visitors to the site. So ask those screening questions. And then select a provider who uses an EPA-registered, hospital-grade disinfectant with the safest SDS possible. If you get the 000, best. If not, understand what it is you're using. Select a provider has fogging or electrostatic spray capability. If not, you're going to be paying for an army of people with spray bottles. Or hopefully you will, because that's the way it would need to be applied. And choose a vendor that's doing something positive for their low-level employees of the community. If you've got a vendor that says, look, I'm paying out of my pocket to keep these people employed. I want to keep them gainfully employed throughout this thing. Do a solid for them instead of for maybe a company that let everybody go or didn't do that. Make your choice matter beyond the choice. If they're doing something for first responders or something like that, try to choose a vendor that's doing that. And then schedule service now before the requests come piling in when the restrictions are lifted, because they are rolling. And lastly, be honest with your provider about everything. Tell them if it's an active COVID case, they need to know. Short term, determine the response time to potential outbreaks after it's over. So you want to have a plan. Will your vendor be ready and stocked with disinfectant for the future? Have this conversation with them. What are we going to do when everybody comes back to work and we get an issue? Have the plan ready with your contractor and document it, and document what you have done so you can show you've taken steps. And at the very minimum, keep disinfecting those high touch points. Long term, we're talking COVID-19 can become seasonal. How is that going to factor into your response plans? Seek an independent subject matter expert, a consultant, and they can review your janitorial services for gaps and areas where they can improve. And then you want to integrate this into your emergency response plan. So with that, I want to open it up for questions. We have probably about 5 or 10 minutes for questions. So Joshua, did anybody type anything in the chat window?
Yes, we have a few questions here. We covered some of it with the dwell stuff and great information. How good are electrostatic systems like Clorox 360?
Clorox 360 is very popular, very well marketed. They're good pieces of equipment, and it just depends on what you put in it. So if you have access to that piece of equipment, that's great. If you want to sell it, I'll buy it from you. But it really depends on what you're putting into the Clorox 360 system. If you're using something that's sodium hypochlorite or something that's chloride based, I'm not as happy with that as I would be if you're putting an SDS 000 through it.
And then someone made a comment, unidirectional wiping is also a best practice.
Correct. Absolutely. Very good point. Does this
says, how do plastics such as switch plates and electronic buttons hold up under the harshness of disinfection versus general cleaning? Will they all degrade faster or become brittle?
So that's a loaded question, because if you're using an SDS 000 hospital grade disinfectant, no rinse food safe, it's not going to be that harsh and should not affect it over the long term. We have some places we've been using this stuff for years and have never seen any plastics degrade. But if you can only have access to harsher ones, I think right now the ends justify the means in terms of people safety versus switch plates. I'd rather replace all the switch plates in the facility than have one of my people catch coronavirus.
And quite a few people are asking if a copy of the PowerPoint will be made available.
The actual webinar will be made available through the Corporate Facilities Council. There it'll be posted on YouTube. Joshua, will we be able to email that link out to all the attendees?
Yeah, we can email that out.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Joshua.
And then someone made a comment. The insurance companies of the contractors are requiring contractors, excuse me, to not list COVID or disinfecting for liability reasons.
Well, so insurance companies are going to insurance companies are going to get you paid, so you're going to do whatever they want you to do. So if that's the protocol for you to get your money, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But it's almost like insurance companies pay out on mold, and the word Stachybotrys has to be in there. So it's interesting how we're all kind of navigating through this and finding things, and because it hasn't been monetized yet like mold has. Mold is a big deal because people can sue for mold. I've done millions of dollars of mold restoration, and every IH I've worked with walks directly into the containment with no PPE on and laughs. So I'm not suggesting everybody do that, but I'm saying we've made it a monetary issue. When that comes over to COVID, when it becomes a monetary issue and there is some people suing, believe me, you're going to want some documentation that says you used a hospital-grade EPA registered disinfectant applied properly by subject matter experts.
Hey, do you have any advice on HVAC systems during the work from home period? Is ventilation advisable even if the building has no one in them?
I would strongly encourage you to talk with your HVAC vendors, preferably the ones that are IFMA members or IFMA sponsors. There's a lot of great things going on right now where they're upgrading to higher level MERV filtration, and some people are even installing UV systems in the HVAC to deal with some of these pathogens that might make it in there. I would defer to the HVAC people in our organization. You can go to the IFMA.org website and to the member directory and find anyone in the IFMA universe if you're a member of IFMA. If not, contact your local chapter and they can put you in touch with an HVAC vendor who can give you that subject matter expertise.
And I have read that spraying anything can actually spread the virus and is counterproductive. I'm assuming this refers to aerosols such as Lysol, though it was not specified. Is it recommended to prohibit the spraying of aerosols?
I mean, if you're talking about something that's that active and that airborne, and maybe in an environment like a hospital where you've probably got the virus is still suspended, meaning it's in the air. Yeah, I could see the argument being made for that, being careful. You want to control it. That's why, you know, in surgical rooms we have, you know, the airflow is directed in such a way as to prevent that from happening. You know, positive, negative airflow. But I would say in the facilities we're dealing with for FMs and the situations most of us are dealing with, you're not going to be aerosolizing when people are there anyway, and it would only be after hours, usually after things have settled, especially during the shelter in place. Everything is just settled unless your security guard patrol has COVID and is walking around coughing through the whole facility. So I'm not so concerned about aerosolizing it unless it's an active environment like a hospital. Then I would have some concerns.
And have you found UV treatment to be effective on surfaces?
UV is fantastic. There's you look at it in two categories. One is what you actually see, speaking of hospitals, you see in surgery rooms, which is a massive UV unit, which has about a 16 to 30 foot throw of efficacy. They're very expensive. They're tens of thousands of dollars for those units, and they only have a short throw, like I said, 16, 30 feet or whatever. They're highly damaging. So surgical rooms don't have a lot of things in there that can be damaged by UV, but your office does. So we tend not to use those in that kind of environment, the big ones. The smaller hand ones, the wands, are effective. I think I got to look at, I think it's a 6-inch distance at a 10-second, I could be wrong, don't quote me on that, time for kill. But it's a very slow productivity. You have to pass the wand over very slow over anything. And by the way, the wands, you can't get them either. What was normally a wand that would sell for $29, I think the last I saw was $129, and they're sold out. But yes, UV does have that capability to do that. It's just wouldn't have the production rates you would need in your facility. Now, if you put it in your HVAC system where they mount it as air passes over it and so forth, that does make sense. But for disinfecting your people's workspaces, I don't think the production rates are there to make it cost effective.
Okay. We're gonna have to wrap this up. Someone is asking if this will be put into the knowledge library. I think that's very doable. I'm sure the CFC would be very agreeable to having that posted to the knowledge library. So,
and Joshua, can I mention one thing? Joshua, can I mention one thing before you close up? There are 2 town halls that are going to be going on. One is today. The IFMA Silicon Valley is doing an SM town hall. There's a webinar for that. If anyone is interested in that, email me and I'll send you the registration link. I will be on that as well. I'm not presenting that, but I will be on it listening. And I know Carolyn McGarry, the Wonder Woman of FM out of Denver, is putting on a town hall I just saw come through as well. So keep on the lookout for some of this content that can be helpful.
Okay, great. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Please stay healthy, and thanks for all that you do. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Wayne, for a great presentation.
Thanks, Joshua. Take care, everyone.